Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. Beautiful afternoon here in Southern California, Catalina Islands right there. With Two Harbor, it's kind of that indentation in the distance. Just a wonderful place to ride. I really love this area, big open space. And we're looking at a top of the line model from Bulls. This is the 650 AM4 AM, meaning all mountain, 650. Talking about the 650B 27.5 inch wheels. So we've actually got 27.5 by 2.6 plus size tires in this case with boost. So in the rear, 148 millimeter hub spacing, 110 millimeters up front, DT Swiss rims. Really nice stuff here. You can see it says Evo Evolution. That's like the top of the line, newest technology from Schwalbe. These are the Magic Mary tires. We've got the new Addix compound. It's like their proprietary rubber solution. Really nice. TLE, tubeless easy. Snake skin, so they've got this protective like liner here along with APX reinforced, so the sidewalls are extra tough to avoid flats. If you're running tubeless, it makes them a little bit sturdier. Just an excellent set of wheels and tires and suspension here. We've got a Fox factory 36 float, 36 millimeters stanchions here, so they're a little bit wider. They've got the Kashima coating, extra hard, less stiction, so if you're braking, they're still going to actuate smoothly. I love the adjustability down here as well. This is a 15 millimeter through axle with quick release, but I always like to put my quick release lever up or kind of back, and so with that little dial on the other side, you can line things up perfectly. It's an air fork, relatively lightweight. You can sag it to your appropriate weight, and then we've got dual compression adjust here. So we've got sort of the outer 3-step, and then we've got like a micro adjust inside, rebound adjust right down there as you'd expect, and then same thing in the rear. These are both 150 millimeters of travel, which is excellent. I mean, this is all mountain. You're getting longer travel, and you can see that in the geometry. So really short, this is like 95 millimeters on the stem. It's not way out, it's kind of back a little bit. So if you're taking a steep descent or taking some bigger hits, it just changes the geometry a little bit and really optimized for that sort of performance climbing and then descending, an enduro sort of experience, all mountain. We've got a seat post dropper here that is not, it doesn't drop in like increments. It's just fluid. You can stop it anywhere you want. Physics Gobi saddle, pretty nice. A little bit narrow and kind of hard. It's different. I'm not wearing padded shorts today, so I'm just experiencing this kind of raw, which is interesting. And then I want to call out the Monkey Link lights. I wanted to show you like how awesome these are. You can just pull that little gray lever and sort of slide them off, attach them. There's also like a fender option. Only in Europe right now, but apparently it'll be coming to the States. And I like that, like the headlight points where you steer. The quality on these appears to be pretty good. Apparently they're made by the same company that does Supernova. And then there's the bottle. This is so cool. It's like magnetic. Kind of twist it, and it comes right off. You can also remove that magnetic bracket if you want and just use the standard bottle cage bosses. So I really like that Bulls has left this kind of open or used an open standard. 45 bucks for that, 170 bucks for the light kit combo. But it's just so neat that they run off the main battery pack. This is the case for a lot of their electric mountain bikes. So we're looking at the eStream Evo 45, so speed pedelec over there. Still AM, long travel suspension, kind of a comparable bike. It's just this one has the Bosch drive system and that one is using Brose. You know, we're getting to compare these bikes back to back and feel sort of the weight distribution and how things are set up. Tons of adjustability. I talked about the front suspension, but same thing on the rear, compression and rebound. Also an air suspension element. And Bulls does a really good job with their frame design. There's a little shield here to protect the stanchion from any rocks that are flying up. And you can see these big knobs on these tires. I mean, these can handle almost anything. They've got a nice plastic slap guard here on the right chainstay. They've got a little chainring guard there. It's alloy. 16 tooth in the front, and then a huge drivetrain in the rear. This is the SRAM XX1 Eagle 11 to 50 tooth. So we've actually got 12 sprockets here, just a huge spread, so you can take on all sorts of conditions. This is a Class 1 electric bike up to 32 kilometers per hour, 20 miles per hour. So Class 1 meaning it can ride on the most trails of any class in terms of electric bikes. And that's really nice when you're out here and trying to follow the rules and everything. California has been really progressive in adopting e-bikes and allowing them to be ridden on different trails. And that's especially nice for someone like me. I have a sort of sensitive knee and I've struggled to keep up in certain cases or to commute regularly. And e-bikes have really given me back that ability to enjoy, to hang out with my friends, or to take on terrain like this, that as you can see, there's some pretty steep sections. I've actually ridden all the way down to the coast there and down to the overlook, these coves. It's just a beautiful environment. I have reviewed the 650 EVO AM4 in the past. This is the 2019 version that we're looking at here. It was actually 2 pounds lighter, which is very interesting. I'm looking at the size medium. They have 3 frame sizes, so that's excellent in terms of dialing it in fit. This is the 49 centimeter. So 2 pounds less. I was trying to figure that out. We're talking about 54.4 pound bike. You know, there's still some weight on this thing. Aluminum alloy frame, pretty stiff rear section here. It's got a couple of pivot points. The suspension design is feeling really good. And again, air suspension's a little bit lighter, but the shielding is something that I think has added some weight. So we've got the power tube, Bosch PowerTube 500 right there. The battery on its own weighs about 6.3 pounds, but with this shielding, it has kind of an alloy cover, it's 7.2. So they're adding a little bit of weight right there. I really like how BULLS sort of tips the Bosch Performance Line motors up into and helps to integrate them into the frame a little bit, maybe raising your ground clearance a bit. And they've got the nice orange accents that tie in. It's a bit of a heavier motor in general. Bosch does a really good job in terms of reliability, but 8.8 pounds there. And then in terms of like the chainstay lengths and stuff, sometimes they're a little bit longer than like Brose or Shimano. They have some other offerings, and BULLS, they spec all out of these motors on their other bikes. So you have a ton of choices. We look back at the name for a second, Evo, that's regarding like an integrated battery. That's what that means. And then they have like EVA, which is female-oriented bikes that also have an integrated battery. And it just looks beautiful. I mean, this thing really starts to blend in. There is a little bit of noise that you'll hear later when we go for a ride with that motor, but it's just super responsive. It's excellent. It's measuring your rear wheel speed. Got a little magnet and a sensor over there. Pedal cadence and pedal torque over 1,000 times per second. It's got shift detection, so when you're going through that wide range of gears, it's not going to wear the chain down, and these sprockets aren't going to get bent quite as easily. It's going to shift a little bit smoother. I really appreciate that. And then the chain isn't going to come off up there, or if you happen to be wearing pants or something, maybe you're not going to touch that chain or get snagged quite as easily. It's an excellent drive system that way. I really appreciate that it's also able to support you up to 120 RPM, so you can pedal quickly. And let's say you're going down a big descent and then right into a hill. I'm like downshift, downshift, downshift in preparation for climbing so that I can get a mechanical advantage. Well, when you do that, you're upping your pedal speed, your RPM, and so this motor can handle it, and I really appreciate that. I always have. I feel like BULLS is doing a better job with their little rubber covers. It is still in the pedal path, so if you're plugged in, you know, maybe it's leaning against a wall, just be careful not to bump the cranks or anything. There are provisions, 20 millimeter, for adding a kickstand if you want to. And then check this out. In 2018, this had dual piston calipers in the rear. Now they have quad piston front and rear. 203 millimeter rotor up front, 180 millimeter in the back. Just a phenomenal braking solution here. And the brake levers have also been updated. These are the Magura MT7, CARBOTeCTURe, so carbon fiber, really, really lightweight. They've got adjustable reach and adjustable sort of throw. So when you're braking, it's like how far do you want to pull on that lever until it actually engages. So I've gone all the way like short on this one, and then I've gone all the way far on this one, so it has to come in a lot further, right? And that's kind of neat. Not a lot of brake levers offer that tool-free like this one does. So I think that's neat, worth calling out. And again, trying to be lightweight. I don't know if that saved 2 pounds exactly. The bike is $500 more expensive than 2018, but part of that's the upgrades on the brakes, the drivetrain. Before it didn't have SRAM Eagle. We've also got the Bosch Kiox display panel up here. So I'm going to jump into that next. I really like that it's removable. It's just magnetic like that, so you can pop it off. There's a little micro USB port on the bottom. There's a little set screw interface, so you can lock it to the bike if you don't want people to accidentally take it off. But the idea is that this could, maybe the bike gets crashed and this can pop off instead of getting broken by staying on the stem. clicks in very nicely. It does have a Gorilla Glass display right here. It's color. There's a little power button here on the left-hand side. And now we've got the display on, so there's a little power button there. There's also a lights button, and that would activate the Monkey Link lights if they were added, which they are not right now. And you can see a little light icon at the top, which is nice. There's a clock, it shows your assist level, and then a battery percentage readout, which is very nice because the older Bosch display panels, the Purion, which is a little tiny one here, or the Intuvia, they just use that same 5-bar infographic, which is 20% steps. It's just not as precise. So I'm really excited about Kiox. I also like that even though this is a little bit smaller than maybe the Intuvia display in terms of the actual screen, it's color. So you can kind of glance down and get an idea. You don't necessarily have to read. And the biggest part here is your speed. So right now you can see there's like a gray little swirl thing, and that means off, and you can see off written up there too. And if I press the plus button over here, then we go to Eco. That's the lowest level of assist. You get 50% assist, 40 newton meters of torque, all the way up to turbo. That's 300% assist, up to 75 newton meters of torque. So quite powerful, and that's red. So if we take it down one step to EMTB mode, that's pretty special. That's a drive mode that's only compatible with Bosch Performance Line CX. And the idea is, you're focused on shifting, you're focused on the dropper and braking and everything. You've got technical challenges that you might be encountering on the trail. It's really nice to be able to let the motor sort of just respond naturally based on how much torque you're applying. So it's still measuring those other signals, but it's really relying a little bit more on torque in that specific mode. And it works pretty well. They worked with professional riders to dial that in, and I think they did a pretty good job. At the bottom here, there are these other sub menus, and if we press the left button here, it takes us into settings where we could change from kilometers to miles. But we're using a demo display here. These are still coming to the US right now. So I can't actually show you the settings. It's pretty neat though. They have Bluetooth, and you can connect to a heart rate monitor, which is kind of neat. And they talk about an app that they're working on in the future. And then we've got that clock, and we've got the little battery percentage again. Go ahead and click to the right. So we got clock, range estimate, and range is cool. So if I'm pressing the plus or minus, go all the way up to turbo. And this is where we were saying, 52 kilometers. So don't get confused here. It's not miles right now, but that's roughly 30 miles. And then all the way up to, it says in eco mode, 166 kilometers, which is I'm estimating about 100 miles. And again, that's based on me riding personally. Trip distance, trip timer, we got power in watts, RPM, which is kind of neat. You can see how fast you're spinning. Yeah, just a bunch of great readouts here, different menus to choose from. And the button pad's fairly easy to reach. You do push a little bit more than with the Intuvia. I still kind of like that button pad the most. The Purion was pretty tough to click sometimes. It didn't respond right away. I feel like this one's pretty good. It's fairly durable. It's got walk mode on top, so you could press walk mode and then hold plus to get a little bit of support if you had to walk this bike home. Maybe you got a flat tire or something. And then that's a select button right there. So between the removability of the display, the USB port to use maybe a Garmin or something, and then the reachable button pad, I'm really a fan of the Kiox display. And that's part of what makes this a little bit more expensive too. So we talked about how it's $500 more roughly than last year's model. But for the drivetrain upgrades, for the display upgrades, and maybe some minor things kind of sprinkled in throughout the bike, this is still one of the best balanced, best performing, and in some ways really good value products I've seen. BULLS does a really good job in terms of quality and value. They started as like a dealer brand in Europe. It's a German brand, okay? And the idea was that this coalition of dealers came together and tried to pick good parts and then create a brand that represented their tastes. That's kind of neat. I haven't actually been and spoken with those people, but I am at the North American headquarters, and we got a couple of these bikes. I wanted to show you the battery, but this is the charger, about 1.7 pounds, 4 amps, so it does fill a little bit faster, and that's nice, especially if you're gonna go for a big ride, maybe meet a friend or something, take advantage of the morning and then the afternoon, sort of like we're doing today. Got the keys in my pocket. Last year they used a different key. This year it's ABUS, which is really nice. I think they make good stuff, and sometimes you can get key-to-like accessories. Before we get there, I want to call out these pedals. They're just cage style. They're kind of 165 millimeter Miranda crank arms. I guess that's all I've got to say about that. We put the key in like that, and then we twist it, and you can see the battery sort of clunk down, but it doesn't flop out, which is really nice. There's this extra little button you have to press. I'm going to try to do that carefully here. There it is. Oh boy. So there's our 7.2 pound pack. It's got a little LED power level infographic there, the charging port, so you can charge on or off the bike using the same charger. Really nice. And then there's the shield I was talking about. So it's really nice. Paint matched. It looks really good. And I think it adds a layer of protection. It's just a little bit heavier, and there's not really a handle built into this thing. So be careful carrying it around. I often recommend, you know, storing it in a cool, dry location. And maybe that means you bring the whole bike inside. And then, again, be careful if you're leaning up against a wall or whatever, and how you plug it in. The Bosch charging interface is pretty nice, though. It's not like a little tiny plug. It's pretty robust, and I don't feel like it's going to get bent or broken as easily. But if you drop the battery, that would be a bummer. These are a little bit more, you know, fragile. Any lithium-ion battery. So this is 36 volt, 13.4 amp hours for roughly 500 watt hours of capacity. We did a little range test on the display a minute ago, and it said, you know, 30 to 100 miles. That was its estimate. And this is a brand new bike. So if you're riding up really steep terrain, it might not get quite that far. Your performance may vary. It all really depends on how hard you're pedaling, your tire pressure, the terrain, how much you weigh. All of those factor in. So I'm going to take this thing and kind of set it in. Maybe before I do that, I want to show you what it looks like inside the bike. Class 1. That's cool. They got the little sticker. It's one of the legal requirements in California. There we go. Just kind of... There we go, and it clicks right in. Not bad. Trying not to knock the bike over here. That'd be a bummer. See it like tumble down the cliff. So I think I'm just going to hop on this thing and take a little ride. Okay, I'm just going to start off in EMTB mode. I like that because as I'm filming and everything, I really don't have a lot of extra focus and coordination to be pressing the buttons. This is just a wonderful mode. You can see there's like that orange swirl, and as the motor continues working, you'll see that lower bar, the bright one, sort of surge, and that gives me some idea of how hard it's working versus how hard I'm working. Fernando's in front of me. We're just going to ride for a second uphill. Nice. Very stable. One thing that's a little bit different about these shifters compared to Shimano is they're a single step and there isn't two-way action. So on the high gear, I can only go that way. I can't pull back. And then on the low gear, one shift is all I've got. So sometimes with Shimano, I like to go tick, 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 and kind of click, I think 3 or maybe even 4 times in some cases. This one, it's only 1 at a time. Bosch drive system's really responsive, but you know, you do get a little bit of probably kind of friction or inefficiency because there's this smaller proprietary chain ring. It's 16 tooth, so it spins for 2.5 revolutions for every single crank revolution. Gives the motor a mechanical advantage. It also creates great chain retention, but there's just that friction that if you're in no assist or if you're trying to go above 20 miles per hour, 32 kilometers per hour, it's going to add a little bit of work to the system. My experience, you know, the trade-off for the reliability and the performance of Bosch is fine, but I want to be fair here and just thorough. The other thing I've heard is that in some cases, if you're in a really muddy environment, mud can kind of build up here and you can get sort of chain suck where the chain's kind of pulled up. I haven't experienced that myself. This is something I've just read about in the forums from other people in the UK where it's a little bit muddier. But yeah, I just want to call that out. Again, here's the nice cockpit, locking grips from Argon. Really nice, got quick release down there still. No quick release in the rear, by the way. 6mm hex bolts versus I think last year they might have had quick release front and rear. This year it's only in the front. I'm going to pedal along. You'll get a better idea for how that motor sounds and how quickly it responds when I start and stop. I'll switch through some of the gears so you can Listen for that shift detection. It's measuring the pressure of the actual shifting in addition to my pedal strokes, and Bosch sensors are able to distinguish between the two and reduce motor power when it thinks that I'm shifting. It's not a perfect system, but it's way better than a lot of other offerings that don't even try with shift detection. There are some manual ones where it physically measures and it completely cuts off, but those ones, they aren't as fast as this, right? So if you're a decent rider and you just ease up a little bit when you're shifting, that plus shift detection makes it really buttery smooth. I'm still in EMTB mode. Man, the brakes are working just super well, and these tires grab. It's a great experience out here. I'm gonna turn the bike around and head uphill, face you forward. It's a pretty steep section to start up, and especially with my knee sensitivity, I'm gonna pedal through for a lower gear before I actually get on the bike, and then just try to climb it. I'm gonna take this up to turbo mode as well. Usually that can be a little overwhelming if it's sort of technical, but this is not. This is just about getting instant power. Brakes are awesome. Awesome. You might have heard the motor stop a couple times, and that's because we're above 20 miles per hour, so it just sort of fades out, which works pretty well. I do miss the multi-shift of Shimano. You know, I'm pressing it. Maybe it's just something to get used to. This shifts very crisply and quickly. I just can't push further, so I keep like, oh yeah, that's an interesting experience. Spent a lot of time on Shimano, I guess. This is pretty steep right here. Nice, dude. So Fernando's over here on the small size frame, and I wanted to do some shots just on pavement so that you're not getting the noise from the trail and everything. So maybe you can just take off safely and I'll follow up. Cool. So here we go. I'm in EMTB mode, which is the one that gives you 120 up to 300% assist. Pretty dynamic, so I'm not having to worry about clicking those buttons, which is really nice. Here's the motor. Super responsive. Bosch is probably one of the fastest. It doesn't just like slowly fade out, it pretty much stops, which is nice. And then if I shift gears over here, now it's going to be a lot quieter. You can see how it's doing in terms of wow, nice alloy skid plate. I didn't realize that. That's nice. Taking some of the mud and stuff, but I think handling it pretty well down there. The bikes are a lot of fun, and the where the Kiox is mounted, I feel like that's my preference, like front and center versus the Purion off to the left. A lot of their other models still have Purion, It's up high, but it's not quite as high as the Intuvia, and again, it might pop off easily with a replaceable mounting bracket versus having to replace the whole display and having it break because it's like a plastic click versus magnetic. So it's a pretty sweet setup. I think that's a good overview. I do welcome feedback, questions. I do my best to be technical about these things. They end up running long. There's just so much to explore. I like the way this looks. I appreciate the sizes, and the drivetrain is very proven. It's been awesome to hang out and see some of the new 2019 models from Bulls. For the full written review, including all the specs, measurements like standover height, minimum saddle height, and a community back in the forums where you can connect with people and ask their preference of drive system maybe, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. I'll link to those in the end card. Have fun, ride safe.